Most people think Napoleon conquered Europe through military genius alone. He conquered it with other people's money. By the time his empire collapsed, he had extracted the equivalent of hundreds of billions of dollars from occupied nations, leaving economies across the continent in ruins that took decades to rebuild. Napoleon's financial system was not a historical curiosity. It was the first modern blueprint for using conquest as a funding mechanism, and every government that has since borrowed, taxed, and extracted its way through military overreach has followed the same arc toward the same ending. France, in 1799, was financially broken. The revolution had destroyed the tax collection system, hyperinflation had wiped out the assignat currency, and the government was functionally bankrupt. Napoleon inherited a state that could not pay its army, could not service its debts, and had no functioning central bank. He solved this problem not through fiscal reform, but through war, turning military expansion itself into a revenue engine. That decision funded the largest land empire Europe had seen since Rome. It also guaranteed the empire's eventual financial collapse. Napoleon did not invent the idea of funding wars through conquest, but he industrialized it. Every territory France occupied under Napoleon faced immediate financial extraction. Occupied nations paid war indemnities, which were essentially forced payments for the cost of being defeated. Prussia paid 311 million francs after Jena in 1806, a sum so large it took decades to clear and restructured Prussian fiscal policy for a generation. Austria paid similar indemnities after multiple defeats. The Italian states, the German principalities, and Spain all contributed to a continuous river of extracted wealth flowing back to Paris. Napoleon called this system living off the enemy. His armies were designed to be financially self-sustaining through looting, requisition, and formal indemnity, reducing the burden on the French treasury. The mechanism was elegant in the short term. France could field the largest army in European history without proportionally increasing domestic taxation, because the cost was being externalized onto conquered populations. But the model contained a fatal flaw that Napoleon understood and chose to ignore. In 1806, Napoleon introduced the Continental System, a trade blockade designed to destroy Britain's economy by cutting it off from European markets. Britain was the one enemy Napoleon could not defeat militarily. He could not cross the Channel. He could not match the Royal Navy, so he attempted to strangle British commerce instead. The logic was straightforward. If Europe stopped buying British goods, British manufacturers would collapse, unemployment would surge, and Britain would be forced to negotiate peace on Napoleon's terms. The reality was entirely different. Britain simply redirected its trade to South America, the Caribbean, and its growing global empire. British exports fell temporarily, but recovered within 2 years. The Continental System hurt Britain far less than Napoleon calculated. What it destroyed was the economies of Napoleon's own allies and satellite states. Continental Europe depended on British manufactured goods, colonial products like sugar and coffee, and the trade networks Britain facilitated. Forcing European nations to comply with a blockade drove up prices, created shortages, and generated enormous popular resentment against French rule. Smuggling became one of the most profitable industries in Europe. Even Napoleon's own family, installed as kings across the continent, quietly allowed illegal trade to continue because their economies could not function without it. The Continental System was supposed to fund the empire by bankrupting its enemy. Instead, it was quietly bankrupting its own subjects. Spain was where the financial logic of Napoleon's empire first visibly broke down. In 1808, Napoleon deposed the Spanish Bourbon monarchy and installed his brother Joseph on the throne. He assumed Spain would be pacified quickly and would join the Continental System, adding Iberian resources and Atlantic trade routes to the French Empire. Spain did not comply. The population rose in guerrilla resistance. The word guerrilla itself, meaning little war, entered the European vocabulary from this conflict. British forces under Wellington arrived to support the Spanish resistance, opening a front that Napoleon could never fully close. The Peninsular War consumed French resources continuously from 1808 until 1814. An estimated 300,000 French soldiers died in Spain, along with enormous quantities of materiel, money, and political capital. Spain was supposed to be an asset. It became the bleeding wound that drained the empire. And while France was hemorrhaging in Spain, Napoleon made the decision that sealed the empire's fate. The 1812 Russian campaign was not primarily a military failure, it was a financial one. Napoleon marched roughly 600,000 soldiers into Russia, the largest army ever assembled in European history to that point. Feeding, supplying, and moving that force required a logistical and financial operation of staggering scale. Russia refused to engage in the decisive battle Napoleon needed to force a quick resolution. Instead, the Russian army retreated, burning crops and supplies as they withdrew, denying the French army the resources it expected to live off. Napoleon's system of funding war through the conquered land collapsed when the land itself was destroyed before he could reach it. By the time the French army retreated from Moscow in the winter of 1812, fewer than 100,000 soldiers survived the campaign. The financial cost was incalculable. The political cost was worse. Across Europe, nations that had submitted to French dominance now saw an opportunity. Prussia, Austria, Russia, Britain, and Sweden formed a coalition. The extracted wealth that had funded French military dominance now needed to be replaced by domestic French resources, and France simply did not have enough. Napoleon was attempting to fund a two-front war across an entire continent using a revenue model that required constant victory. His first serious defeat had revealed the model's structural bankruptcy. Napoleon attempted to compensate through increasingly aggressive domestic taxation in France and more brutal extraction from remaining occupied territories. Neither worked at the scale required. French citizens, who had supported the empire when it was profitable, became increasingly hostile as it began demanding sacrifice without delivering victory. The legitimacy of the Napoleonic system had always rested partly on its financial success, on the idea that empire paid dividends. When the dividends stopped, the political foundation cracked. The empire collapsed in 1814, was briefly restored, and collapsed again permanently at Waterloo in 1815. What followed across Europe was a financial reckoning that lasted decades. Prussia's debt from Napoleonic indemnities restructured its entire state finances and contributed directly to the military fiscal reforms that eventually produced the German Empire. Spain's economy, already fragile, entered a prolonged crisis that contributed to the loss of most of its American colonies. France itself emerged from the Napoleonic period with significant debt and a generation of young men dead. The financial cost of Napoleon's empire was not paid by Napoleon. It was paid by the populations of every nation he had touched for decades after his death. The specific mechanism Napoleon used, funding military and political ambition through extraction from weaker parties, has never stopped operating. It simply changed its instruments. The United States spent an estimated $8 trillion on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, according to the Brown University Costs of War project. Those wars were not funded through conquest or indemnity. They were funded through debt, effectively borrowing against future American taxpayers, the way Napoleon borrowed against conquered populations. The extraction mechanism moved from geographic to temporal. Instead of taking money from other nations, modern governments take it from future generations through deficit spending. The result is structurally identical. A system of military and political overreach funded through mechanisms that appear sustainable until they suddenly are not, leaving the actual cost to be paid by people who had no voice in the original decision. Global military spending reached $2.4 trillion in 2023, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, a record high, occurring simultaneously with record levels of government debt across most major economies. Napoleon's army lived off the land until the land ran out. Modern governments borrow against the future until the future refuses to cooperate. The geography is different. The timeline is longer. The mechanism is identical. Napoleon died believing history would vindicate him. The populations who paid for his ambition across 3 generations did not get a vote on that question. Every financial system built on the assumption that expansion can fund itself indefinitely arrives at the same moment. The point where the next territory to be extracted is the future itself, and the future is already spent. The question is not whether that moment comes. The question is who is holding the debt when it does. Napoleon's empire looked unstoppable from the inside, until the financial mechanisms propping it up quietly collapsed. The same extraction model, wearing different instruments, is running in every major economy today. If you want to recognize the pattern before it arrives at your door, subscribe, because by the time the cost becomes visible, it has already been decided who will pay it.